As far as I can remember, I always thought I was different. I was like the way I acted was different. I used to focus on different things that many people my age wouldn't focus on. I always had a narrowed interest. I had difficulty with social situations. Like I was able to have like conversations and have friendships, but it was so difficult for me to really maintain a conversation. And it wasn't until I was in the early high school that anxiety got into me really bad, like especially social anxiety, not knowing social cues, not knowing like all these things that many neurotypicals have for granted. A point where in my sophomore year of high school, I had a breakdown so bad to the point that I had to be hospitalized. It was President's Day weekend 2005. I was put in their crisis unit. I was observed by psychologists, and they knew about my background. They knew I had like these issues going on, and one of the things that they said they took me to the office and they told me, "Oh, Robert, looking at your history and what's been going on, we believe you have Asperger's, which is now considered autism spectrum." But then it wasn't until I read about it, that I figured and what it means, and not only Asperger's but autism itself. And when I'm reading it, I'm like, oh my God, everything is making sense now. Everything from that time forward, just everything is like a light bulb in my head. I believe in some ways things happen for a reason, and it unfortunately had to go to that level for me to get that diagnosis. Now, my parents have told me that when I was 10 years old, it was suggested that I was autistic, but it wasn't like fully diagnosed. So it wasn't until this incident that I was fully diagnosed.
Sometimes we shy away from telling our kids. I've had many conversations with parents where they're nervous to tell their child that they have a diagnosis, but they don't want that to hinder them in some way or for them to feel different or left out. And your story is a cautionary tale of saying, no, the sooner that you know what's going on, the easier it is to understand why you might feel at odds with the people around you. And so I think that that's an important distinction and something that all of us need to be very cognitive of. Sometimes our best efforts might not lead us to the best outcome for our kids. So that's really kind of eye-opening. The things that you've gone on to do are really impressive as well. If you don't mind, share some of the work that you're doing in the community now.
I'm currently, for work, I'm a full-time therapist at a residential home for adolescents with autism, in which I work with them on gaining skills to help with their anxiety, depression, and behaviors. I also am a autism self-advocate, in which I've spoken in many speaking engagements at many conferences and workshops. I've also started a speaking engagement firm with a friend of mine who's also autistic, in which we do speaking engagements for many organizations. So far, we've done virtual talks, but we're planning on doing in-person very soon. I also have written many articles for The Mighty on autism. And for me, this is something I want to really continue throughout my career. I really want to build on it, in which I can speak to different organizations and different schools and different conferences, something I would really want to continue on. Because I feel that, I honestly feel that autistic individuals have the ability to succeed in life. I want to break the status quo that, you're only limited at this case. No, they're only limited based on their interest. What I mean by that is listen to the autistic individual. What do they want in life? What would make them happy? And that's what I want people to understand.
Well, and I do. I think that that's a powerful message to have, because we do, just as I mentioned a moment ago, with us trying to shield our kids from necessarily knowing that they have a diagnosis, we also have a tendency to think for them and say, oh, well, this is going to be best for you, or I've done research and this is what needs to happen. And in many cases, we need to just take note of what they want, especially as they become teenagers, young adults. that have a very distinctive point of view and have something that they can contribute in a number of ways. I think that that's an important distinguishment to make as well. If you were to have one message that you wanted parents to know from this conversation, if there was just one thought that you would like for the autism community to think about, what would that be?
It's a couple things, actually. One, we're not damaged, and we're not going to be limited. And what I mean by that is that we're not damaged in the sense that we can do things if we are only listened to.
I agree with you. I feel like in so many cases, especially when kids are young, that we think and we move and we're trying to, solve all the world's problems. But I often tell folks, sometimes it's just a matter of diving in to their world. And if you have the patience to dive into somebody's world, then you'll be given this wonderful opportunity to see things from a totally different perspective. But not having the patience and just trying to, for lack of better example, cram a square peg in a round hole and say this is how it has to be, it'll never work as well as understanding why it needs to be a square hole. Like, okay, let's make the hole square. Or let's figure out how to help identify those rough edges so that it can work in harmony. But you only get there with having conversations and understanding the person, not just the diagnosis.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for being on with me for this mini session and telling a little bit about your story and giving folks that are out there wishing and hoping for their children to be their best selves a little bit of inspiration today.
Well, thank you so much.
The content within the Vortex podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have learned in this podcast.